Okay, so thanks everyone. Thanks for being here today. We are having an excellent episode for our Global Employability Expert Series. And so as you might already know, let's remember a little bit about how we're going to conduct our webinar today. So first of all, we are recording this webinar, so you will be able to watch it later. And remember, you can also watch our previous expert series in our YouTube channel. You can subscribe. We can share later on the link, so you can subscribe and see all our videos. So we are going to have a speaker today, and we can ask questions. We have the Q&A section, the box below where you can write your questions, and at the end of the Santiago's presentation, we can ask all these questions. If you have any question regarding your program or details about your own experience, please remember that you can reach out your IEM for those kind of questions, okay? So for today's webinar, I'm very excited to have this very interesting topic, which is the way into the IT industry, how to shift your career into tech or boost your career by learning how to code. And for this very interesting webinar, we have Santiago Scanlan today. So let's find out a little bit about who Santiago is. So after working many years in marketing roles, Santiago Scanlan left the corporate world to found Plataforma 5, Argentina's first coded bootcamp in 2017. Since its launch, Plataforma 5 has trained over 300 software engineers that are currently working in the tech industry all over the world. So in this presentation, Santiago will share his experience in the tech industry as a young entrepreneur who founded a coded bootcamp. And he will also share his insight about the IT industry, what great job opportunities there are in this market, and how you can shift your career in only 4 months by learning how to code in an intensive bootcamp. So without further ado, thank you very much, Santiago, for being here, and welcome to our webinar.
Thanks, Mirta, and hi, everyone. The main thing I want you to leave the webinar with, the main idea is that any of you can become a software engineer in a very short period of time. I studied international relations and political science, which is like social sciences, and extremely far away from the tech and the IT world. And despite of that, I learned that it is very, very feasible to enter this amazing world of technology in a very short period of time. So I sort of encourage you to explore this way, because the main thing, which you probably already know, if you are considering a professional career now after once you finish your studies at university or anywhere else, is that the IT world offers unmatched opportunities. Like, it's way and beyond what almost every other industry can offer in terms of employability, because there's something very special in the IT world, that demand for jobs is way bigger than the supply for those jobs. So there are more open job positions than people to fill them. So there's this skills gap, which is, it's huge and it's widening year after year, which of course translates into a great opportunity for a career in that industry. So if you know how to code or learn these tech skills, basically you have like unlimited job possibilities, sort of unlimited employability worldwide, because every country needs hundreds of thousands of developers. They're needed everywhere, in Europe, in the US, in Asia, in Latin America. Any country has a shortage of developers. So if you learn those skills, you have like a job guaranteed anywhere in the world. Of course, that shortage translates into extremely good salaries. By far, the tech industry always has like a premium versus the same job level in any other industry. Say, for example, I know you're a junior in marketing and you're a junior in programming. The junior in programming will learn like maybe 50% more than its counterpart in other industries. And that's, of course, true into other seniority levels. Like as you grow, developers in general earn much more than their counterparts. So you have guaranteed job for the rest of your life. Your salaries will be amazing. You can work anywhere in the world. And the best thing for me is that it opens you the opportunities to transform the world. Like nowadays, we are going through for me, it's sort of like this, the Renaissance, like it was in Florence in the Middle Ages. We're living that, but it started maybe in San Francisco with all this surge of technology that it's transforming the world. But right now, it's really gone everywhere. Like there's innovation and transformation everywhere in the world, in China and Europe, in the US, and like it's really global, this thing. So learning how to code opens you the door to enter that transformation and to be a part of that global revolution that it's improving humanity in amazing ways. So it's also a very meaningful career. So that said, that's sort of the amazing world that you can enter if you learn how to code. So now the question is how to learn how to code, because what might happen to many of you, or at least that's what happened to me, was that I saw this picture, I saw that there was this world of opportunity, but I had no clue of how to enter. And the only way I could think of was to study, I don't know, computer science or electronics engineering, or some sort of very technical and long and hard career. But then, as I started researching, I found out that there was another way. And there were the coding bootcamps. Coding bootcamps are very short courses of around like 4 or 5 months in total. Some are shorter, which are very immersive, and that will take you from almost zero to your first job in tech in a very short period of time.
Hi, Santiago.
So,
I want you to stop you there, because when I hear that, I'm like, 4 months, right? That's such a short time. Yeah. How does that happen? Like, it sounds very extreme, right? Intensive.
It's very intensive. And so there's a caveat to everything I just said, that all this amazing and shiny and Disneyland-like world of IT, it's there, but it's very hard to enter. So anyone can learn how to code, but for me, this is what I tell every student that applies to our coding bootcamp in Latin America, is that world, it's very close. It's like a couple of months away, but the path to get there, it's very difficult. You know, it's a steep path that requires you a lot of energy, dedication, work. So anyone can do it, but it's not easy at all. The good thing is that nowadays, university has sort of, for me, an outdated educational model that requires you to go through a lot of courses for a lot of years in order to finish and start looking for a career. And the truth is that in a university, you see a little bit of many things. So you become sort of a master of nothing, you know, jack of all trades, but master of none. Bootcamps are a bit different. They are like, their sort of their scope, it's way smaller. Like you just focus on, for example, in our case, JavaScript full stack development, like just a specific thing, but you go laser focused in depth in order to get the necessary skills to land a job in that area afterwards. So sort of we focus a thing and we give you the necessary skills for you to start your career. And the truth is that once you start your career there, it's almost like a university itself. In IT, working, it's learning, because you have to learn all the time, keep updated and learn new stuff, because things change constantly. So it's sort of like work really trains you and educates you. So how to get there? In our case, the process, it's like this. It starts from zero. We have what we call an introductory course, and that's sort of a pre-bootcamp material that lasts for around 60 hours. It's basically an intro to programming course where you learn the basics of front-end development, which is like the most standard thing on the internet. You learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which are the three main languages that compose everything you use on the internet today. That can be learned anywhere. Like, there are literally thousands of online courses, free tutorials. Actually, I can give you a list of free resources that you can use to start this intro to programming thing. There's Free Code Camp, Codecademy, Udacity, there's a lot of resources. But the thing is that with that prerequisite material, you just get the basic notions. Truth is that online courses very seldom, it's extremely hard to land a job by only doing online courses, because online courses tend to be short, but tend to be incomplete and tend to be focused on you just learning some concept instead of you learning how to work in a real industry environment, which is what bootcamps provide, and which is what the industry needs. So what we do is, with those free online courses or paid online courses, whatever, you learn the basics, and then you can apply to the bootcamp, which has sort of a selection and an admissions process, which has mainly two parts. You have a technical interview process in which you have to complete and demonstrate that you have proficiency on JavaScript, like basic JavaScript, but the main notions of the language. And then there is sort of a personal interview in which we also assess the sort of the soft skills or the capacity of applicants to work on teams and to sort of get along with other people. And once that is fulfilled, like if you go successfully through that admissions process, you enter the bootcamp. So all these pre-bootcamp phase and admissions process phase takes around a month and a half, maybe two. And then once you are admitted, the bootcamp starts, and then you commit full-time, sort of full life, Monday to Friday, 10 hours a day for almost 4 months. So that's where the real thing starts. But the good thing is that everything starts from zero. Sort of anyone with any background can start from the intro material. It starts from scratch. So it sorts of equalize the playing field, you, me, doesn't matter what you work, what you do, what you study, whatever, we all start from the same place, and we have all the same resources to start our career there.
And Santiago, do I need to, I don't know anything about coding, right? And it sounds like perhaps do I need to know math or anything related to that to be able to code?
That's a great question. Truth is, you just need very basic logic. Programming is not about math at all. You just need to know that something is bigger than something. Basically, it's like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. That's all. That's all you need. It's more about logic, okay, if I have this condition and this is true, then I want this to happen. Yeah. Or while this happens, or while this is true, do this, and if this changes, do that. It's more of writing something that has a logic and coherence behind. But it's not at all like a math centered thing, programming. Of course, then there are many paths once you enter programming. There are specializations, and as in any discipline, you have sort of, if you go to medicine, you have many specializations afterwards. In the case of the programming, you have this basic programming thing, and then some paths lead to a much more math-oriented programming, right? But you can perfectly have an amazing career in software engineering without knowing nothing more than adding,
basic math,
dividing, and multiplying.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Yeah. I'm gonna write some things that you're asking, because they're good things. That names of bootcamps, I can tell you afterwards some bootcamp names. But so in order to continue with this short narrative on how the path goes, once you enter the bootcamp, the thing is that you have to commit completely into that. In our case, and which is the standard sort of Silicon Valley type of bootcamp, there are some different formats of bootcamps, but in our case, it's like the standard Silicon Valley thing. It's Monday to Friday, 10 hours a day for almost 4 months. And actually, most of the time, people stay a bit more than 10 hours because there are many challenges and things you're building and stuff, and people just sort of enjoy it and they want to keep coding, because it can become a bit addictive because you're building stuff. When you code, you're creating things. So as you're creating something and you're seeing it improve, and you sort of get into this rabbit hole of, okay, I added this feature and now I want to add this and I want to improve that. Sort of, it can become sort of a bit of addictive. And most of the time people stay a bit more than 10 hours, but that's the average dedication that you need. And along that path, you basically go from a very basic concept of programming into building real world apps in what's called full stack development. Full stack means that you can code an app from scratch completely. This is maybe a bit technical, but applications, any application you use, either web or mobile, has two parts. One that's called the front end, that is what the user interacts with, sort of the screens, the buttons, the inputs and stuff. And the other part is the back end, that is all the logic that runs behind, sort of the program and the databases and all the things that you cannot see. But a full stack engineer can do both. So sort of can code an app in its entirety. So that's what we do. And in that process, you learn the different tools in order to be able to create that. And the cool thing is that, sort of, in our case, half of the bootcamp is learning the tools, and half of the bootcamp is working in groups to develop like a real world application. And what happens is that, and there are many misconceptions in the world of IT, that people in general think that it's sort of a lonely thing, a lonely work job, that you're alone coding your computer and stuff. But truth is that everything in IT requires a lot of work and a lot of people interacting and a lot of teams and a lot of developers. So you're always coding with people. You're always sort of sharing code, building parts of a big thing. Sort of applications are very challenging tasks. So what happens is that different people code different things and they have to make it work together. So sort of merge their codes. So you're always working with people. It's a very creative endeavor. So in our bootcamp, basically half of the bootcamp is working in teams to develop a real world application the same way that you will do once you finish and enter the industry. Basically in groups and in teams. And of course, in that process, we use Agile methodologies and all the standards that are prevalent in the industry, which are also very interesting concepts that are ways of working in teams towards a common goal, but in a very agile way and iterative process. Sort of, it's very, very related with the essence of a startup. You know, that you have a challenge, and it's not that you plan along like a perfect schedule to get there, but you start doing things, testing, trying, iterating, and you sort of create something and improve it constantly. It's
yeah, something that I hear from what you're saying is like, I'm thinking of a programmer, someone who programs, like what's their mindset, right? And for what you're saying, well, I think that being curious is essential, right? Like having the urge to understand what's going on, right? I need to solve something. And also, well, it seems that critical thinking is super important, so we can understand the logic and all the relations that happen, and also a lot of teamwork, right? Because that kind of surprises me, because I have the tendency to think that people who program are like, you know, solitary in their room, like alone. And actually you're saying that you need a lot of teamwork.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like that's one of the misconceptions, that it's a very sort of interactive job. You always have to be in contact with
Yeah,
designers.
I'm thinking about now, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting to know. And you mentioned agile methodologies, right? That's something really interesting that for people, I understand that these methodologies started in the IT industry, but now they're applied to any industry because it's a way of working, right? Like you described, like trying, iterating, like seeing what can be improved.
Yeah, definitely. It's a mindset, really. Like you can apply that mindset to anything. And as I say, it's very related with the startup world and with starting something, you know. And like you have to launch fast. There's a common phrase that it's launch fast and iterate. Like start with something, although it's crappy, although it's
Even if it fails, then you try, you see what went wrong, you improve, you do it again.
Yeah, like the best experience you can have is real world experience in anywhere, like in any aspect of life. So in the startup world, the best thing you can do is start with what's called an MVP, like a minimum viable product. So do something, launch it to the world, see how it interacts, see if users like the concept or not, see what things they like, what they don't like, and focus on sort of improving what it's useful for users, and launch sort of iterative versions, you know, better versions every time. And that's the essence of programming. You know, you start with something with some basic code, and then you launch new versions and new versions, and you work on it and you make improvements, and you start with something very small that grows into something huge. And that process it's very sort of, as I said, sort of addicting. You know, it's fun. It's fun because you're creating something and you can see it. That's the amazing thing. For me, it's fascinating that when you code, you're creating something out of nothing. Like your intelligence is becoming something tangible that transforms the world. Because you cannot touch Google, but Google has had sort of a revolutionary impact in humanity. And it's just intelligence made into something that's useful. I know it's
That's
sort of
super
intangible.
exciting.
Yeah, yeah. And there are many things to come, or technologies that are coming that will transform humanity, like extremely in extremely deep ways. So there's a lot to come still. So you're in time to join this revolution.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned, okay, I don't know anything about coding. And I said, you know what, I want to give it a try. And I go to bootcamp, and in 4 months of very intensive training, I can, if I understood correctly, become a full stack developer, which means that I can do the whole application, the front end, which is what the users will see and interact with, and then the back end, which is like the logic and how everything works, right? And what if, for instance, I say, okay, I'm not really sure that I want to dedicate my professional life, like 100% to coding, but I would like to know about coding so I can perhaps use this in my other, in what I already do. Is that possible? Like to combine that?
Sure, that's a great question, and actually, it's part of the title of the presentation. So maybe we can wrap up with that and then go to the Q&A. But the good thing about coding and technology is that it entered every field in humanity. You know? Absolutely everything you do and see is being transformed by technology, from economics to law, to logistics, to production, to whatever. You name it, technology is transforming it. So if you have a prior background and you don't necessarily want to be a developer, like a full-time developer, having this coding and tech skills can help you boost your own career. For example, if you're in law, now, like one of the big things that's coming, and it will certainly revolutionize law and all that, the legal world, are smart contracts, for example, which are automated legal contracts. That's going to have an amazing impact. And if you're a lawyer and you also know technology and how to code, you can combine those areas into something super powerful. And actually, those like those profiles and backgrounds are more scarce than like just coders or just lawyers. Sort of the people that can combine two areas of expertise are sort of have a clear competitive advantage over others. So it's always a good thing to, as you say, to combine those experiences.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And I have a question more related to how did you come up with this, right? Because you mentioned, well, we said this was a first bootcamp camp, and I didn't know, in my experience, I knew that boot camps existed in other countries, not in our country, in Argentina. And so I'm interested to know also your entrepreneur side, right? How did you come up with this idea? What it took you to create a team, to say, hey guys, I have this crazy idea or not? How was that process for you?
In my case, at least, was that I always wanted to start something, sort of a startup. I always liked education a lot. And I sort of started like, I said, okay, I want to have a startup. I know the tech industry is the best for this, and I need to learn how to code. How do I learn how to code? I started looking for online courses. I did a lot of them. None of them were useful because, as someone on the chat was saying, once you stop coding, sort of you can very easily forget what you learned if you are not doing real world projects. So I sort of did a lot of small online courses and then I forgot them. And then while doing this research of options for learning how to code, I stumbled upon the bootcamps that were like barely starting back in like 2013, or 8 years ago, more or less. They were just starting in San Francisco. And when I saw that, it blew my mind. Sort of a clear path from zero to a first job in tech in 3 or 4 months was like, that's amazing. I want to do that. But it was very complex to travel to the US, and like sort of it was very expensive, the visas, and I had to quit my job and blah, 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 blah. So I said, okay, this is my opportunity for start my own startup and bring that into Argentina. Like instead of go to do a coding bootcamp in the US, I can import that and launch the first coding bootcamp in Argentina, which I did. So that's how I started. And then, of course, there's always a leap of faith. You have to leave your comfort zone and take a risk and quit your job and start doing this full time. But if you work with all your heart for it, it works in the long run. I know it's like it's not really that. There are no dangers, in starting a startup. It's a very enriching experience. Like you will learn a lot. Even if you fail, you will learn a lot. So you're always gaining something. You're never losing in it. So for me, it's like a no-brainer. So of course you have to like it, no? And it's a very, very intensive process. So
yeah. Well, there's an interesting conversation going on in the chat about how we can incorporate new skills. Do we lose skills? I think that the more we learn, like you mentioned, is really useful. I do know some people who had absolutely no experience in coding, and one day they say, people are talking about having to know how to code, and they jumped into this bootcamp, and now they're doing amazing things, combining what they already knew with coding as well, right? So I think that that's something really exciting. And I have some questions from the audience. Let me, I have one question, which I don't know what it means. What does a no-code developer do? What is this?
Yeah, no code is sort of a new or a growing area field in the world of IT. And it's basically using software or tools that are already built to create apps and landing pages and stuff without knowing how to code. And for me, it's really useful, definitely. Like it can speed up a lot the process of starting a startup or testing some idea. So it's a great resource. And even within companies, you can, like even in a tech company, maybe there are some tasks that can be done by somebody who does not know how to code with a no-code tool or technique, and they don't have to bother a developer, which is a very scarce resource. But no code, it's a great option for me to start. However, it has its limitations. Like, sorry, to wrap up no code, you can learn no code, and there are many courses or online sort of resources, and they will help you to build your own websites or small applications without knowing how to code, just like copy and pasting and like matching things. So it's very useful. The other part of like the bad part of no code is that it has its limitations. You cannot build anything with no code. Like the world will always need developers because more complex stuff, which is actually the work that the tech industry really needs, has to be done by developers. So you have a limit with no code. For me, no code, it's more useful for someone who wants to start a startup and wants to test an idea. And that's a great way to sort of do it very fast and very cheap. So it's a great resource. Right? It's a complement. Sorry, somebody had asked like some time ago for names of bootcamps. There are many different bootcamps all over the world. In our case, the one I founded, it's called Plataforma 5. The bad thing is that we are in Spanish, so we're fully remote, so anyone in the world can take it. In fact, we had some students from the UK, but they were Spanish speaking. So in our case, if you like to do that, it has to be in Spanish. But there are many great bootcamps. For example, in the US, the ones I like the most are App Academy or Full Stack Academy. I mean, those are sort of have the best level. Then in Europe, there are some shorter ones. They're in Europe, but they start in Europe, but they're global now, which are Ironhack, which started in Spain, now it's global, and our one is Le Wagon, which is French, but it's also everywhere. Those are shorter and have sort of they're not as hardcore tech as the US bootcamps are, but they're also a good option.
And they always last around 4 months. That's like a worldwide thing, or it can vary?
It can vary. Like for me, 4 months, it's a standard of a minimum quality or level of the graduate. Because if you go to a shorter bootcamp, truth is that you will have a worse coding level. Like the more time you spend learning, the best coder you will be. So for me, you should look for ones that at least last for 3 or 4 months at least. Then you have different options. For example, there is a very big one. Then within the bootcamp world, there are sort of different styles. And there's a very big one that's called Lambda School, which their business model is, there's something that's called ISA, which is income sharing agreement. And that means that you only pay for a bootcamp once you get a job afterwards. That's, for example, in the case of Lambda School, they do completely that. All of their students are financed. But the problem there is that their business model requires them to have a lot of students, because it's sort of the quantity game rather than the quality game. So they train thousands of students and aim for a small percentage of those having a job and paying the thing back. So it's easier to get in, but the quality of the training you will receive is probably not as good as it would be in a smaller one, a more boutique bootcamp that has a sort of a more strict admissions process, but will probably grant you a better graduation after finishing. But there are many options. Like you should definitely do the research, and there are many resources for you to research and compare.
Yeah, great. I don't know if you saw any other interesting question. I've had many questions around what coding languages there are and which one we should start with, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the good thing is that it really doesn't matter what language you learn. For us, what I say is that learning to program, it's like learning to drive. No? If you learn to drive a car, then you can go to a track and it's very similar, or you can go into to a motorbike And it has many of the same components that any other kind of driving has. You always have like this feeling of speed, of switching gears and going through cars and highways and stuff. Like every programming language shares the same basic components. They all have variables, they all have functions, they all have conditionals, they all have loops, they all have arrays, they all have, almost all have objects. So they're the same elements, but they're sort of written a bit differently, or they have their own sort of specific rules. But the logic is always the same. And if you see like a good programmer, they can learn any language like easily, and they can switch languages without any problem. And they usually code in more than one language. So for me, it's in our case, we choose JavaScript because it's the most widely used language in the world. It's a language with most demand by far, because everything that lives on the internet requires JavaScript in some form. So it's a great skill to get. But then if you want to learn Python or C++ or whatever, you can do it easily. Once you know JavaScript in depth, you can easily go to our other languages. And the same applies to the other direction. If you're great at Python, learning JavaScript, it's a breeze.
And what is the difference? Like perhaps what you can do with the language, or is it just more about what perhaps some companies use? What is about what are
in general, they are used for different parts of the applications. Like there are languages that are better for example, in the case of Python, it's extremely used in the world of data science because it's great in handling numbers, and doing math. Instead, JavaScript, it's very flexible and it's like very easy to code, but it's not very good with numbers due to how it's created. Numbers tend not to be that precise in JavaScript. Like you could have a sort of mathematical errors or things happening that you wouldn't want to have, like in a bank account, or in other things that require strict mathematical precision. So in general, they are used for different purposes. For example, JavaScript is used a lot in the front end. Actually, it's the only programming language that can be used for the front end. And then the rest of the languages can be used in the back end. JavaScript actually can do both the front end and the back end. Some of the guys said that they knew Node.js, and Node.js, it's like JavaScript on the back end. But mainly JavaScript is the only language that can do both parts. All the other languages do the back end only. And some of them are great for doing specific things on that back end. So, but there's like a lot of work in any language you choose. Like there are job openings for any.
Yeah, because someone said, yeah, go ahead.
Someone asks, what's the difference between coding and programming? It's the same. Like they're two interchangeable terms in general. No? People use them as synonyms.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm learning so much. I didn't know what a full stack developer was, and I was always confused about this and back. So I feel already I learned so many things. So yeah, someone said, okay, if I know one programming language, do I have to know all language or study one programming language? I think that we said like that will depend on whatever we want to do with that.
Well, I mean, I think you should start with one and ideally specialize in one. But then if you find your passion, if you want to go into another area that requires another language, you can easily learn that. There's a lot of change. Everything changes a lot in the IT world. So in the career of a developer, he will be forced by the forces of the industry to learn a lot of very different things. That the things a developer works right now are extremely different of the things that they worked like 10 years before. So 10 years ago, you had a set of tools. Right now, the tools they use and the languages are very different. So you will always have to be learning new stuff. And that's amazing. Like for me, that's one of the main beauties of the industry, because it forces you to be thinking all the time and growing and improving and growing yourself.
Yeah.
So someone asked about Kotlin and Java. Kotlin and Java are two backend languages. Very important. Java, it's different from JavaScript. They're completely different languages. Actually, JavaScript was named as a marketing stunt, because Java was huge in that moment. And when JavaScript launched, they wanted people to think that it had something to do, but it has nothing to do. And they're both backend languages, and they're fast for doing a lot of backend things. But as I said, you can learn any one of those and have a great career in any. In general, bootcamps focus on JavaScript or Python because they are the sort of the easiest one to learn and the ones that have the most demand. So in general, you find bootcamps with those languages, but then if you want to learn another one, it's going to be really easy once you sort of dominate one language very well.
Okay, yeah. And so someone said, okay, I finished a web development camp, but I think I'm not ready or able to work on IT and I have fear of doing it. What can help me gain confidence in myself? What can you recommend?
So, sorry, the question is they finished studying
a web development camp, but they're not feeling very ready to go and get a job in the IT industry. What can someone do in that case?
That's a great question, actually. And see, a caveat is that as bootcamps grow and have more and more students, the percentage of the job placement, like the graduates that find a job and the speed in which they do, it's reducing in general. In our case, we strive a lot to keep the 100%, sort of that every graduate finds a job. But it really depends on your commitment and passion, because if you end a bootcamp, you'll finish the bootcamp with a lot of tools that are useful. But then finding a job and finding your first job, it's sort of a different task because it requires you determination and sort of a process for looking for job openings and applying systematically, and sort of training yourself in gaining experience in how interviews go, and sort of also going through the things that you learned on the bootcamp and sort of improving them, doing pet projects, things on the side, sort of to keep that coding going and not forget the stuff to learn. But truth is that there's a lot of demand in the industry, and if you are committed and you're persistent and you apply like systematically to a lot of jobs, and in parallel you practice and you do your own projects, which there are a lot, like in the internet there are a lot of optional projects that you can look for and code. You should be able to find a job in a short period of time. But it's really important that you are determined and sort of committed to looking for a job, and not how do you say, no bajar los brazos, like
don't give up.
Never giving up.
Yeah, definitely. I have another question here. Do we need some special apps? Do we need to install some apps in order to start coding?
No, that's the great thing. The only thing to code, actually, what professional coders use, it's the same laptop you're using and a code editor that it's sort of like a Microsoft Word, but created for coders. And there are many of them, but one of the most popular right now, it's called Visual Studio Code. And it's just sort of a text editor that it's specially designed for coding. But that's all you need. And then all the other tools are sort of web things and stuff that you will sort of interact with. But the only tools you really require are those two things: your computer and a code editor, which is free.
Does it have to be a super fast computer, like
no.
A plane?
No, any average computer can do the job. Like, the good thing in here is that you're not coding, like you're not installing the application. You're writing the lines of code, which is text in the end, that will make up that application. So it's almost any computer can handle that process. Sorry, someone asked that he said that he's in, I think he's in a law graduate and had zero knowledge of coding. I would be happy if I could give you some advice to start your journey. for me, it would be, I would recommend you to do some sort of intro to programming courses online to see if you enjoy the dynamics of doing that. As I said, there are many free stuff. There are many projects that you can sort of intro easy projects that you can do online. And then if you feel that you like it and you would like to commit and sort of consider coding as a career or to boost your own career, I would definitely recommend you to go to a bootcamp. Anyone, I think almost, if you do a good research, all the good ones will work. But I think that would be my recommendation. Sort of have a go with coding first on your own to see how it feels. And if you like it, go for a bootcamp.
Okay. So I guess we've answered many interesting questions. Do we have any more burning questions? I think we could continue speaking with Santiago for a long time. But I wanted to see if we have any final questions that we may have for Santiago. Santiago, do you see any question?
What is the job will be? I think the question is like, what job do you land after you finish a bootcamp? Or maybe they were asking about the other things. Something's happening in October. So
yeah, I think in the chat there's a parallel conversation, very interesting as well. Yeah, so
the best framework for coding. I saw two questions that are interesting. That one is there a connection between deep learning and coding? And the answer is yes. Of course, deep learning and AI, they are disciplines, huge disciplines.
What is deep learning?
Deep learning is a sub area of what would be machine learning or artificial intelligence, like having computers learn how to do human stuff, basically, or learn how to do stuff. And that's a discipline by itself. No? It has a lot of statistics, math, algebra stuff, but everything needs of you, like everything has to be done via coding. Like you have to code all these mathematical and statistical concepts into the computer in order for train models and do a lot of complex things. So sort of deep learning and artificial intelligence, it's the intersection between coding and a lot of math and statistics and like many complex things. So yeah, they are very related, and you need to learn how to code to be, to work in that area, which you can do, of course. And there are some specific bootcamps aimed at data science. So if that's your interest, I'd recommend you to go for that path.
And can you remind us? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, there's a question about the framework, and I think they're asking about the JavaScript framework or coding framework. There are some things that are called frameworks, which are some like sort of tools that are built with JavaScript that they help you sort of create things faster and easier. But you have to they're made up with JavaScript, but you have to learn how to use these tools. And the main ones, there are three main ones that are React.js, which was created by Facebook, Angular.js, which was created by Google, and Vue.js, which it's open source. And the one we focus in, and the one that's the most popular, is React, which is Facebook created it, but it's open source, so it's good. And that's huge, and it's growing a lot. So if you have to choose a framework, I would recommend React, but truth is that anyone would work. I wouldn't choose Angular, actually. I would go for React or Vue, but anyway, if you choose Angular, there's also working there.
Okay, I have one very interesting question. People are wanting to know, what was the most interesting or challenging program that you created?
Well, actually, the most challenging program thing I created is Plataforma 5 itself, which is
The
sort
platform
of,
itself, the bootcamp.
yeah, like it's a mechanism, you know, having to coordinate a lot of people to create an organization that trains a lot, hundreds of developers. It's a very challenging task. So we started from nothing. We started like, it was two of us, my co-founder and I, and now we are like over 35, we're reaching 40. So things grew a lot and you have to coordinate a lot of things, and I know you get more complex and professional every time. So it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah. And so one question to wrap up, someone said, okay, can you mention what other programming languages are besides Java? You mentioned Java, JavaScript, what else?
There are a lot really, like, as I said, languages, there are many. There's Java, JavaScript, Python, Rust, C#, C++, Ruby. Really, there's a lot of them. I would recommend JavaScript because it's sort of like the most universal, the most flexible, and for me, it's the best path into programming. But then you can move to any other, or if you want to start through another one, you can do it. But it's really the same. Like the important thing is to learn how to code. But JavaScript will be the one in which you will have the most resources and stuff available to do fun things. You know, with JavaScript you can do cool projects. Like there are many forums and stuffs and videos and things that will help you on your path. So it's the richest ecosystem. So I would definitely go for JavaScript, which has a lot of courses, material, projects, and stuff. And then if you like it, then you can learn another one. Sorry, someone asked, he said, I'm a web MERN developer. MERN, it's an acronym for some specific technology. And I work as a freelancer. I know a lot of technology. The problem is working as a freelancer is hard. There is a lot of people from the world that can do the same work I do, but much cheaper. What's my your advice for someone like me? Truth is that there is a lot of demand in the world, and there's a market from everyone. Like there are very cheap options. For example, right now Argentina or India are countries that due to economic reasons can have very cheap developers, like around, I don't know, maybe $15 an hour. But then there's a lot of room for, like, companies are willing to pay up to thousands of dollars, like monthly. Sort of, if you know how to code well, you can do, like, there are different levels of complexity in which you can enter. So if you're a sort of a junior developer, you will probably have to compete with cheaper options. But anyway, so you either have two options. Either you start as a junior and grow your salary as you get more experience, or you aim for a company and just work like for a specific company instead of being freelance. And in that company, you will learn a lot of experience. You will be sort of nurtured as a better developer, and you will pay better. But the truth is that if you have the skill, you will be able to access great salaries, definitely. Like there's a lot of work with them.
Yeah, super interesting. I saw a question in the chat that said, are there any feminist bootcamps or any bootcamps for women? I do know the answer of this, there are. And because I actually saw a bootcamp that is only for women, which the name of the bootcamp is She Codes. Like, I know, Santiago, probably you know all other, and that's really interesting also, right? Well, I don't know, I feel like I really want to explore coding. So some things I take up from our call. So basically, coding is something that is in high demand right now, and it will continue to be so. We can boost our career. You mentioned the case of law and so many other areas and professions that we can do better if we know basic coding. You mentioned we can do this by looking online, basic courses, right? To introduction to coding. You mentioned like we know there are free websites like Coursera, edX. What others you mentioned where we can start coding?
Udemy, Udacity. There's a lot of like JavaScript specific code courses. There's a lot of courses on YouTube. There's one that's called Free Code Camp that has a great sort of intro to programming material. There are a lot really. Maybe if you want, I can send you sort of afterwards a short email with some resources for people interested. But yeah, there's it's only like one Google away, one Google search away.
Yeah, it sounds
free
so.
JavaScript programming.
Yes, it sounds exciting because now I'm feeling like I want to go into this website, explore some free resources, some free courses on basics on programming, and then if I see that this is for me, then I have the option to go into bootcamp for 4 months, like really get into what coding is, and then I explore a new opportunity into the IT industry. But I can also combine it to boost what I already do. That's super interesting. And also I really like the idea of this teamwork, because I had the idea that coding or people who program are really lonely. And so it sounds like there's a lot of having to coordinate, speak, debate with other people to choose what to do, and that sounds really new to me to begin with, and also really interesting because it allows us and it forces us to develop our teamwork skills, right?
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting skill to have and to develop while well in this career, right? So if you have just now to wrap up our conversation, so a nice piece of advice for someone who wants to start saying like, I don't know anything, what piece of advice you can give me besides going into this website? And perhaps should I have a routine? What should I do?
For me, the most important thing is determination. That coding is hard, like probably 90% of the ones in here, me including, will have a hard time as they learn how to code. But if they are determined, like if you are determined and you want to enter tech and you want to start a career in tech, and you go push forward, you can do it. It's really just a thing of determination. It will be hard. You won't understand things. You have to go over it. You'll have to spend hours like thinking and trying and facing mistakes and stuff. But if you continue and you go over it, there's a lot of work to be done, and you can really find a job anywhere. And actually, and to wrap up, I saw just one of the questions that was how to find a job internationally. There are a lot of open job openings like all over the world, and now with the pandemic, everyone has gone full remote. So like the world is your job marketplace. And I would recommend you that once you need to get to a minimum level to apply for a job. An online course won't be enough for starting a career. But if you do an online course and then you do a bootcamp and you have sort of solid skills, then you can start applying like through job websites from all over the world, and start applying and applying and applying, and you will certainly find some that will be interested in making interviews and eventually offering you a job. For example, and this is sort of our conclusion, we give the bootcamp in Spanish, but for example, we are in Latin America, but there are many companies in Spain which also speak Spanish that are really interested and need a lot of developers. So many of our graduates work for Spain, and they're in Argentina, and then they start traveling through the world, and they just apply through the internet. So if you learn, like if you speak in English, the world is yours. And if you don't speak in English, even in the Arab world, there are a lot of job openings, I can guarantee. So you can, the key thing here is determination.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Santiago. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I'm leaving here if you want people to contact Santiago, you can find him on LinkedIn. Plataforma 5, that's the name of the bootcamp. You can also add him, Santiago Scanlan, and you can also send an email to him if you want to reach out. And Santiago, let's create this list so we can share with our attendees today, and we can share all these nice websites that you mentioned so people can access to it, okay?
Yeah. So, and one last thing, somebody asked if there is an age to start to learn coding, and no, there is no age limit, definitely. Like we have graduates that are 55 years old and that find a job afterwards. So you can start no matter what age you are. And
perfect. Thank
I
you so
encourage
much.
you to do it. Thanks.
So
Thanks,
maybe
everyone.
this can be something for today or for when I retire. Who knows? Well, probably for sooner than later, because I'm very curious and I would love to know more
The
about
sooner
coding.
the better.
Yes.
The sooner the better.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I hope you enjoyed our webinar. I really thank you, Santiago, for being here with us today, and wish you all a really lovely day or night, whatever you are in the world. So have an excellent day.
Bye-bye.